All right, here we're going to do a quick tutorial. I'm just adding some layer differences and some layer modes just so you can do some fun things with combining pictures. All right, we've already sort of combined things using the eraser tool and layer masks. We're going to use some of those same tools, but I'm just going to give you a few things to do to make sort of like an artistic poster look to something. Also, as you are making abstract images, you could take these things to sort of create an abstract image using multiple images together. All right, so we're going to start with our crowd image here in the background. I'm going to also start with this image of the Police here, one of my favorite bands, jumping through the air. And I'm going to combine these two to make like a poster. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all. Right? I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it on top of my background. All right, now this picture is much smaller than the other one, even though this one looks like here's my inches here, and here's my inches here. The reason this one is much smaller is because this one is only 100 pixels per inch, and this picture is, the crop picture is 300 pixels per inch. All right, so this is a third smaller. So it's going to be small. You want to be more careful when you are doing this that you use images that are closer to the same size, but I'm just going to do this quickly, so I'm not going to worry too much about the resolution. Also, I'm going to change this in such a way that the resolution might actually look sort of cool. So I'm going to use my moving tool, show my transform controls. I'm going to hold the shift key on my keyboard, and I'm going to drag this image so that it starts to fill. I'm going to make this window a little bigger so I can see the outside edges of my picture. I want to fill this background image with my musicians. Okay, just like so. I'm going to accept my change, and that gives me this look right here. Now, the first thing I could do is I could actually just change the opacity of my layer. So here's layer 1 on the top. If I click on opacity, I can turn down the opacity of this layer. Right, and that starts to make the one below it sort of transparent, which is pretty cool. But the problem is that I start to lose some of the details of that top image because it's actually becoming invisible. So I'm going to turn this back to 100%, and I'm going to try something different. I'm going to go to my layer modes right here. Right, it's this little drop-down menu right here. Right now it's on normal. You can experiment with all sorts of different things here. Like multiply, what multiply will do is it's going to take the white areas, like the whitest areas, and it's going to make them semi-transparent. If I go to lighten, which I think I might actually use, is it sort of does the opposite, where it allows the lights to be sort of a solid color, and the black in the background becomes sort of translucent or transparent. I'm going to start with this one because I think it actually looks pretty good right now. Now the problem is that I'm losing some of the fidelity in the faces of my musicians, right? Because it's about the musicians, not about the crowd. So I want to make sure that I can at least see my musicians' faces here. So, I mean, there's a myriad of things you could do, but one thing you could do is I'm going to make a duplicate of this layer, right? So I'm going to go into this drop-down menu. I'm going to say duplicate layer, like that. I'm going to say OK. I just made a copy. Now it's lightened as well, so I'm going to go back to normal, like so. Okay, and so I can see this layer is right on top of this layer here if I hide it or show it. I'm going to make a layer mask on this top layer. Okay, I'm going to use my paintbrush. I'm going to use black. I'm going to use a pretty big brush here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint out a majority of this background like this on this layer. All right, I can even make his hand come through like this. Do a little bit on Sting's head like that. All right, like so. There's old Andy Summers there, hammering away on the guitar. All right, like so. Remember, I can always flip-flop back to white, and I can make sure, let me make this brush a little smaller. I can make sure you can see Sting's head there, and you can make sure you can see Stuart Copeland in the background, and you can see Andy Summers' face here. So what I'm doing is altering that layer mask. So you can see with the layer mask, it's actually pretty easy. Like I can do all sorts of crazy things like this. Now, if I want to take this a step further, I can go to my layer mask adjustments here. Oops. All right. I'm going to go to my layer mask adjustments, and I'm going to go to levels and put that on top of everything, and I'm just going to crank the levels a little bit here. Okay, because I want this to be a little more posterized or a little more intense. Right, just sort of like that. And you can see here as I increase the levels, you can see the real pixely nature of that top level. This doesn't look very good. All right, and then finally what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some color to this, but I'm going to do it in such a way that I'm not going to hand color everything, but I'm just going to lay it right on the top. So I'm going to make a new layer, which is this button here in the Layers menu. Click on that. It gives me an empty layer. I'm going to look under my Gradient tool, which is here. All right, there's my paint bucket. And I'm going to fill this layer with, I guess, violet. I can choose any color I want to here by clicking on that. Maybe I'll use I'm going to go ahead and use violet. So I'm just going to say cancel. I'm going to make sure I'm on layer 2, and I'm going to fill this layer with purple. Bam. All right, so it filled this whole layer, and I can't see anything. It sort of undid all my work because that purple's in the front here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the quality of this layer. So I'm going to go to, let's say, difference. And look at that. How awesome is that, right? So it's playing upon the colors that are lying underneath, and it is, what do you call it? It's changing the colors, the properties of the layers below it, because we're actually looking through layer 2 now with this weird difference filter on here. And it's showing us all this craziness that's sort of happening, right? You know, and you can throw these layers in all over the place to try things. You could try different different varieties, different layers, depending on, you know, what's underneath. It's going to make different, you know, different things happen. Again, if you want the faces seen, I can put a layer mask on this. I can use my paintbrush with black again, and I can paint out, you know, if I want their faces to be shown. All right, I'm eliminating that purple you can see up here in those faces here. And then if I want to do like another artsy sort of thing where, you know, his hand is not so great here because I don't want that guitar. I guess maybe I'll do the drum here. All right, so that we're seeing what they do. You know, you could do something like this. And that's about it. You know, like really you could have some fun sort of altering the look of this sort of a piece here. And then finally, you know, you could ultimately drop text on here. You could do other images and things like that. You can cut it up. But this is just a basic way of using some level adjustments and layers and then duplicating layers to create interesting effects. All right, if you watch part 2, I'm going to show you how to use one image to create an abstract image by sort of cropping and cutting and changing.